So this video will be on a continuation of surface techniques, and I'm going to begin with what's called paper resist. And what I did earlier was I just had a piece of scrap paper and I made some curvy lines, cut them out into this. I also had one at the end that I tore. So it's just a torn piece of paper, and we'll see what I can do with them in a bit. But before I begin, I want to share with you that you all have your white slip, your white decorative slip that came when you picked up supplies. And I used the white slip to coat one side of this cube with the white slip. You can see that contrasts better. Not a especially thick coat, it was literally 2 coats. And I did let it dry completely, so it's no longer tacky. I can run my hand across it and it just feels like any other side, just feels like clay, completely dry. It's very important. So then with my paper cutouts, I can lay them down, kind of get a rough idea of where I want to place. And with the white background, I'm then going to use the red slip I have. You, of course, don't have the red slip, but you have the cobalt slip. So you can play with, multiple colors, and that's what I'm going to show you here. And to do paper resist, the best thing to do is to take your paper, and the way to get it to stay down is this container, this little bowl here, ceramic bowl, has water in it. And I'm just going to, so I just dip that into the bowl. I didn't have the paper stay in there for very long. It was just in and out. For those of you that have made paper mache, it's quite similar. So you don't want to have the paper dripping, sopping with moisture and water, but once it's just nicely lubricated, you can come over to your piece and lay it down. And this just allows it to stick, and just, especially since I'm working outside, you may be as well. The wind, it'll just, it's a good technique for indoors. I'm not doing this specifically just because I'm outside. But you can see, if I come closer, it acts as a barrier, that piece of paper that can then have these wonderful negative space lines as we apply slip over top. So I'm going to just again take this piece here, dip it in, out the water, and then come and lay that down again. And it just sticks. And then come closer. So that's what I have there. And now I'm going to take my brush. I showed you this brush before, but it's just a pretty thick bristled brush. And then here is my container of this slip. And I'm just going to apply right over top of the paper. I'm going to paint 1 coat over top the whole surface of this side. Bear with me for a bit while I put this coat on, and then I'll bring it closer so you all can see. Paper resist is a wonderful way to just layer up, and again, to just create multiple layers, and it adds such dimension to your work, which you can achieve with glazes, but often times slip can be used this way as well. Great thing about slips is where you put them, they stay. They're unlike glazes in the respect that glazes flux and they melt and they pool and they run. Slips, where you put them, they stay. So whether or not you decorate your work mostly with slips or glaze, they both can add a variety of interest. Okay, so I'll bring this closer. That's what that looks like. It's one coat, as you saw. It's a little thin, so that's what one coat looks like. You can pretty much see that it's still thin in certain areas. But for time purposes, I would add another coat, but because I want to keep these videos fairly short, I'm just going to hang out just a bit, and you would want that to dry fairly well. Ideally, you would want it to dry so that it's not tacky at all. So this is just a manila folder. Just gonna see if this will help dry it a bit faster. And then you can take your needle tool, which is the best tool to use to get the edges, just to lift up that paper. Or not, you can use your fingers. I have next to no fingernails, but if you have fingernails, that would work as well. So then you can just lift off, and it's the ooh la la moment. See that one piece taking off. Nice, right? That nice flowing line is as simple as that paper resists. Working this way is so satisfying. Just such a clean, decorative, right? So that's another way to add some dimension to your work with color. And you could do more layers. You could let that dry. You could maybe go back a different direction. You only have 2 slips to work with, but that's not to say you can't take a little bit of your white slip, a little bit of your cobalt slip, mix them together to make an in-between color. You know, white added to your cobalt will make it a little bit of a lighter blue. You might want to experiment with that. However, don't use it all. You want to keep, you know, whatever you mix, you want to keep that as a separate, maybe 3rd container. Just an idea, throwing that out there to play with. And let's see, that's paper resist. I want to go over like a sponge technique. You've got this sponge in your pottery toolkit, and I'm going to do just that. I'm going to take my container here that has the red slip. I'm going to clean this brush. I'm going to take some of the red slip and add it to the white slip. I need to come closer for you to see. You can see that. Just kind of mixing it like I would if I were painting. However, that's the challenging thing with ceramics, is what you see is definitely not what you're going to get. By that I mean in the firing process. So it's often a very challenge for beginners when you are starting to working ceramics for the first time to understand that what color you see in a glaze bucket or a slip bucket, once it's fired, it can come out of the kiln quite different than what you see here. So that's just another fun chemistry side of ceramics. But so I have the white and the red, so that kind of made like a more of a blush kind of pink slip. And then with my sponge, I'm just soaking up some of that. And then I'm going to come over to my And I just wanted to show you this because it's just a sponge stippling technique, but it can be really beautiful. Almost painterly. And it just adds another kind of nice aspect to your work. So I'll stop there just to give you an idea of what that looks like. That little lightness of color can be rather appealing. And I do want to show on this video how to apply a coat of slip. It may be fairly obvious, but you can just take your brush and I'm going to use my white slip here and just show you how to coat one side. So you have your slip. I'd recommend, they say to use 3 coats. Like if you were to buy slip commercially, on the back of the container, it says usually they recommend using 3 coats. But that's not to say, again, you have to follow that, because oftentimes I just want to do this to show you that even one quick coat can be just fine, especially if you're going after the effect of almost seeing through, right? So I did one quick coat, and you may be able to see what I mean by just that one coat still has a nice translucent effect that you can almost see the clay, the natural clay behind it. And sometimes that can really yield a beautiful result. So keep that in mind and possibly try. If you did want a complete true white, you would just let this dry completely. Wait, what I mean is no tackiness to the touch, and then recoat another coat or 2 until you don't see any of the streaks and it's just a nice white coat, which I am going to do. I'm going to do another coat, and I'm going to do actually 3 coats, and then I'm going to do another video on how to do some tape resist. So to be continued.